Robocalls, tied for most annoying type of phone call with every other type of phone call. Robocalls are clearly infuriating. Every one of us has answered our phone at some point to hear this.
Hi, this is Josh from the customer service department. Can you hear me okay?
It is urgent that you contact us concerning your eligibility for lowering your interest rate.
You have qualified for a free medical alert system.
There is a non-bailable arrest warrant issued under your name.
The reason of this call is to inform you that IRS is filing lawsuit against you.
Oh, it was the pause in that last one that made it a real cliffhanger. I mean, you basically knew where it was going, but there was a tantalising chance that they were calling people to inform them that the IRS was filing lawsuit against Nicolas Cage, which you assume is always true, but a call to confirm every now and then would be nice. The point is, everybody is annoyed by robocalls. Hatred of them might be the only thing that everyone in America agrees on now. And if you've been feeling like you've been getting more of them recently, you're actually right. Robocalls increased by 57% in 2018 to nearly 50 billion calls, and it's understandably pissing people off.
The plague of robocalls is getting worse. They're the #1 consumer complaint to the Federal Communications Commission, which receives more than 200,000 protests a year. Robocalls make up roughly 60% of all complaints to the FCC.
60% of all complaints to the FCC are about robocalls, so they're definitely aware of the problem. It's like the actual tea salon in Vancouver called Neverland. By this point, they definitely know they have a real issue. The only question is, what the fuck are they going to do about it? The nuisance of robocalls has gotten to the point where even local news reports about them get interrupted.
Oh, what's that? Is that your phone? Yeah.
We can't even get through an interview without an unwanted phone call.
I'm getting a robocall right now as we're talking.
There you go.
As I was preparing this report, I got one.
Because you are qualified for lower rate.
It is just not often that a news report gets interrupted by the subject of that report. Is your teenager getting involved in a strange new sex trend? It's called watermeloning, and it involves... God damn it, can you not do this somewhere else? So tonight, let's look at why robocalls are on the rise and what can be done about them. And let's start with a basic definition. Robocalls are any call where you hear a recording or a robot voice, or when a machine automatically dialed your number, even if there is a real person on the other end. And while a small percentage of robocalls may be useful, calls about things like school closings or prescription reminders, the vast majority of them vary from the irritating to the outright illegal. And you might be surprised to know how many major companies are involved in this. A list of top robocallers includes Capital One, Comcast and Wells Fargo, all of whom use robocalls to chase debts. And sometimes they do that a lot, as this woman can testify.
Lee Bourgeois never suspected one late mortgage payment would trigger what she considers an avalanche of harassment.
It came and I just blew me away.
Lee's attorneys say they've logged more than 6,000 calls from Wells Fargo to their client over the last 4 years. Some days, such as in January, Lee says Wells Fargo rang her more than 20 times a day.
That's absolutely ridiculous. Because what is the point of calling someone 20 times a day to collect a debt? Oh, this is actually great timing, because while I couldn't pay you 45 minutes ago, a small propeller plane full of unlaundered drug money just crashed into my den. Thanks so much for the call, you ravenous ghouls. But as you undoubtedly know, it is not just major companies who do this. Phone calls are now so cheap and the technology is so widely available that just about anyone has the ability to place a massive number of calls.
You've created a program here on your laptop.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to hit a button, and right about now, the calls should start hitting.
All at once. This is insane. They're all ringing.
Yeah.
OK, that's both very impressive and, when you really think about it, not actually that impressive at all. It's basically the finale trick from the world's least amusing birthday magician. Ta-da! Wait, nothing? Well, guess what? The great laptop Deanie got paid in advance, so fuck all of you. And if you're thinking, hold on, what about the do not call list? Well, it still exists, and very occasionally a big company like Dish Network will get fined millions for violating it. The problem is, though, it only applies to one particular kind of call, sales calls. And the list doesn't physically block companies from calling you, it's just something they're supposed to check before doing so. And scammers generally ignore it. First, because they're scammers. And second, because it's now easy to conceal their identity with something called spoofing. And I'll let Senator Susan Collins show you how it works in the most awkward possible way.
My screen is reading Internal Revenue Service. Well, let's see. Hello, this is Susan Collins. May I ask who is calling?
Hello, Chairman Collins. This is Sam Dewey from your staff.
Are you calling from the IRS?
No, Senator. I'm actually over here.
Cool. You know, spoofing is actually the perfect technology for Susan Collins to be demonstrating, because think about it. It's all about temporarily pretending to be one thing and then disappointing everyone when you reveal who you actually are. But despite sounding like Urban Dictionary slang for when magicians shoot heroin, spoofing is undeniably effective. Robocallers can pretend to be calling from your area, increasing the chance that you will pick up. And individual scammers can even pretend to be someone that you know, as one reporter found out.
Cybersecurity expert Jim Stickley sets up his phone to call my mom, posing as me.
Here we go.
Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Mom, real quick, I need your Social Security number and fill out some beneficiary forms. Can you help me out real quick?
Well, for what?
I've got this beneficiary form. I just need to fill it out. What's your Social Security number real fast? Great. Thanks a lot, Mom. Love you. That was it.
You have it.
That was it. I've got her Social Security number.
Holy shit! Literally everything about that was upsetting, from the fact that Jeff Rossen had someone scam his own mother, to the fact that she fell for it, to his amazing reaction when he realises that his mother did something stupid, to his bold choice to broadcast his own mother's stupidity on national television, to the fact that this man just told another man's mother that he loves her, to the revelation that he thinks Jeff Rossen sounds like a middle-aged man squeezing his own balls, to the fact that Jeff Rossen could really use a new shirt. The point is, there's a lot happening in that clip, and none of it is good. Also, a quick side note on that. His mother's Social Security number wasn't bleeped to protect her identity. It had to be censored because her Social Security number is fuck shit fuck dash cock twat dash taint jizz shit tits. It wasn't her choice. It wasn't her choice. Blame the Social Security Administration. And thanks to all these new tactics, the onslaught in scam phone calls is huge, and it's only getting worse.
Next year, some estimates predict half of all mobile calls will be scam calls.
Wow. And that is a real problem for consumers, because you have to use your phone. We can't go back to the days where everyone would just shout their message into a jar and then mail that jar across the country. That was a terrible system, as it was only marginally more accurate than having AT&T now. Oh, you like that business, Daddy? Johnny's acting up again. Johnny's acting up. Oh, I bet I'm going to get some spicy jars in the mail about that. Woo! So, the point is, what can we do about this? Well, on a personal level, you can tell individual companies you do business with not to call you. By law, they're actually not allowed to robocall your cell without consent. But that is where this gets tricky. Because those user agreements that you agreed to, you know, the ones that no one has ever read, they often give companies consent to robocall you and can make revoking it incredibly difficult. For instance, if you're a customer of Credit One Bank and you want them to stop robocalling your cell, just take out your user agreement and turn to page 4, section 19C, where you'll find that you have to physically mail them written notice featuring your name, mailing address and the last 4 digits of your account number to this P.O. box in Nevada. And it makes total sense why you would opt not to do that. I would rather receive 1,000 phone calls a day, every day, for the rest of my life than go out and buy a stamp. I mean, how the fuck would I even do that? Do I have to go to a post office, or can I just go to a Walgreens? And if I can go to a Walgreens, is it all the Walgreenses or just some? And if it's just some, how do I find out which ones? Call, literally call, a place of business with my telephone and ask them if they could sell me a stamp? OK, then what? I have to physically walk to the Walgreens? Literally, physically walk, like with my legs? And wait in line and buy the stamp? What now? Put it in a mailbox? Where the fuck am I going to find a mailbox? The only mailboxes I ever see are those weird boarded-up green ones. What the fuck are those things, by the way? They're spooky. That's what they are. It looks like a memorial of a past mailbox that died in a war. So, now I have to find the one mailbox in New York City that hasn't sacrificed its life for this country, pry open its big, hungry mail mouth and shove a stamped envelope down its dusty throat. None of that's gonna happen. I'd rather die than engage in that nonsense, and deep down, I think you fucking know that. So it is no wonder that some people choose to simply mess with robocallers, as one journalist did when he noticed the person on the other end sounded a bit suspicious.
Well, I'm calling about an online request you once made about health insurance coverage.
Okay.
I work with all major companies and compare...
Hey, are you a robot?
What? No, I am a real person. Maybe we have a bad connection. I'm sorry about that.
Will you tell me you're not a robot? Just say I'm not a robot, please.
I am a real person.
I mean, I believe you, but will you just say I'm not a robot? It'll make me feel better to hear you say it.
There is a live person here.
If you could say the words, I'm not a robot, it would really mean a lot to me.
I am a real person. Can you hear me okay?
Right, but will you say I'm not a robot?
That man is dead now. She killed him, she stole his skin, she walks among us, and she'll kill again. But as fun as that is, experts advise you not to engage with robocalls at all. Don't pick up, and don't talk if you do answer, because that lets them know that yours is a live number and you'll just get robocalled more. But the much bigger point here is it should not entirely be up to us to deal with this bullshit. The FCC has the authority to police robocalls, and a few years back, they actually put some guardrails in place with a set of rules designed to limit them. As the FCC's former chair explained at the time, they basically followed a simple principle.
The consumer needs to be the one who's in charge. The consumer needs to give consent that they want to be called, or if they are called and haven't given consent, to remove that consent by saying, don't call me anymore, or by calling their phone company and saying, I don't want to get these calls.
And that sounds completely reasonable. But unfortunately, those rules were then struck down after a trade group sued, at which point robocalls increased significantly. So we made real progress toward addressing a problem, but then we blew it. We basically got our one-year sobriety chip, then celebrated by drinking a gallon of Captain Morgan. Which is not to say that there aren't things that the FCC could do. Unfortunately, their current chair is this guy, Ajit Pai. You've probably seen him on this show before alongside his stupid mug. And by the way, cheers. Cheers for you. Now, Pai says a lot of the right things about this. He said that robocalls are the scourge of civilization, and he's had a little too much fun showing how dedicated he is to tackling this issue.
To borrow from former President Kennedy, let every robocaller know whether it wishes us well or ill. And we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any solution, and oppose any bot to assure the survival and the peace of American consumers. It sounds like I may have just won a cruise. If you'll excuse me, I have to take this call. But thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Ladies and gentlemen, that man is a goober. And Ajit Pai clearly has aspirations for higher political office, but I would argue that that's not going to work out for him, because Americans can, have and will elect bastards, morons, blowhards, crooks, perverts, dipshits, conmen, scumbags and shitweasels, but they will never, ever elect a goober. But while he talks a good game, Pai actually opposed those rules that we mentioned earlier and was extremely happy when they were overturned. And since becoming FCC chair, he has seemed reluctant to force telecoms to act. For instance, he could require them to offer free call blocking services or implement something called call authentication, which could significantly curtail spoofing. But he hasn't done that. Instead, what he's done is urge them to do it. And while some say that they are working on it, the fact is, if he had required them to do it from the get-go, we might actually have those fixes by now, because telecom companies aren't really going to listen to you unless you force them to. And AT&T isn't going to listen to you at all unless you call them on T-Mobile. How would they hear you otherwise? Their call would drop out, that's right, business daddy. Oh, that's right. You've inherited a problem child. Let's dance. Let's dance, you and I. But the thing experts are really worried that Pai might do is bow to pressure from groups like telemarketers and banks and draft a new, narrower definition of what constitutes auto-dialing. It's technical, but that would basically limit what would count as a robocall. And if he does that, it could have huge consequences. So, for instance, if Wells Fargo called your cell phone 6,000 times, you might no longer be able to sue them under anti-robocall laws. And it is safe to assume that at that point, robocalls are going to increase even more. So, if only there was a way to get the FCC's attention on this issue. Of course, I mean, one way to do that would be if someone had, I don't know, say, the office numbers of all 5 FCC commissioners, because then you could, hypothetically, set up a programme to robocall those numbers every 90 minutes with a message, say, I don't know, like this.
Hi, FCC. This is John from customer service. Congratulations. You've just won a chance to lower robocalls in America today. Sorry, but I am a live person. Robocalls are incredibly annoying, and the person who can stop them is you. Talk to you again in 90 minutes. Here's some bagpipe music.
That would be really annoying, right? To get that every 90 minutes. It would really drive the point home. And, you know, I guess at this point, it's probably obvious what is about to happen here. Yes, FCC, we meet again, old friends. Except this time, unlike our past encounters, I don't actually need to ask hordes of real people to bombard you with messages, because with the miracle of robocalling, I can now do it all by myself. You see, it turns out robocalling is so easy. It only took our tech guy literally 15 minutes to work out how to do it. So, when I press this button, will it trigger our robocalls to the FCC? No. That would be too simple. Instead, behold. Instead, when my finger presses this button, it will trigger this much larger finger that will press a much larger button, which will trigger our calls to the FCC. So, FCC, you know what you need to do. And by the way, if you want to tell us that you don't consent to be robocalled, that's absolutely no problem. Just write a certified letter to the address that we've buried somewhere within the first chapter of Moby Dick that's currently scrolling up the screen. You got that right. You got it. Find the address, write us a letter, and we'll stop the calls immediately. And if you are thinking that there should be a simpler way to opt out, well, no shit. OK, there's simply no point delaying this any longer. Here goes. Unleash hell! It's ringing! I think it's for you! That's our show! Thank you so much for watching! See you next week! Good night! Pick up!